All right, let's just jump right in. When you picture a natural disaster that costs billions of dollars, what pops into your head? A wildfire, right? Or maybe a huge flood, or a massive hurricane. Well, today we're going to challenge that picture, because we're talking about a threat that's surprisingly powerful and incredibly costly: hail. So let me just ask you straight up, what natural hazard do you think is as financially destructive as a major hurricane? Go on, take a guess. I'm willing to bet it's not the first thing that comes to mind.
The answer? A severe hailstorm. Yeah, you heard that right. The data is telling us that the financial knockout punch from a major hail event can now rival a Category 4 hurricane. I know, it sounds crazy, but we're about to break down exactly how this is even possible.
So let's get into it and unpack that pretty shocking claim. We're going to dig into the hard data in this first section. Okay, this is the number you need to see. $30 billion. That's the potential insured loss, according to new modeling, from a single, really severe hail event. We're talking about the kind of storm that might only happen once every few decades. And that number right there, that's the whole story. $30 billion is right in the same ballpark as the damage from a major hurricane slamming into the coast. It's a jaw-dropping amount of destruction to come from, well, frozen rain. So you have to be asking, if it's this bad, why isn't it on the news all the time? And that brings us to our next point. We're calling this the billion-dollar paper cut because it's a threat that's so often underestimated. Now check this out. This chart breaks down the risk in an extreme 1-in-500-year kind of storm. And look, in a massive storm event that could cause, say, $71 billion in total losses, hail isn't just a piece of the pie. It's basically the whole pie. It accounts for nearly 80%, that's about $58 billion, of all the insured losses. And we're not talking about a niche problem here. Across the U.S., you've got 43.5 million properties with a moderate risk or higher from hail. If you had to rebuild all of them, the total cost would be a mind-bending $17.84 trillion. John Schneier from Cotality said it perfectly. He said, hail doesn't command the same headlines, but the data shows it has become one of the most financially destructive natural hazards. He calls it a death by 1,000 paper cuts kind of problem. And honestly, that's the best way to describe this quiet, growing, and incredibly expensive threat. So, the big question is, why is this all happening now? What's changed? Well, let's figure out what's driving this whole thing.
It really comes down to two big things happening at the exact same time. First, you've got what's happening with the weather itself, the meteorological trends. And second, you've got exposure trends, which is just a fancy way of saying we keep building more and more expensive stuff right where the storms want to be.
So on the weather side of things, the trend is pretty darn clear. The 20-year average for damaging hail days is about 122, but in 2024, it was 135, and in 2025, it's forecast to be 142. The frequency is just going up. There's no denying it.
And that weather trend is colliding literally with our own expansion. As our cities get bigger, especially in these storm-prone parts of the country, we are putting more and more high-value properties right in the bullseye. The math is simple, and it's getting really expensive. More storms plus more targets equals way, way bigger losses.
So let's zoom in on where this problem is hitting the hardest. Let's talk about ground zero for this stuff, the Texas hail hotspot. Just look at this table. It shows the top 5 states for homes getting slammed by damaging hail in 2025, and, well, Texas is in a completely different universe. Over 235,000 homes impacted. That's more than 5 times the state in second place, Wyoming. It's not even close. The amount of financial risk crammed into this one area is just immense. If you look at just the Texas Triangle, so the big metro areas of Dallas-Fort Worth, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio, you're talking about over $2.2 trillion in property value at risk from hail. Trillion. But here's the thing. Hail, as bad as it is, rarely shows up to the party alone. So let's pull the camera back and look at the bigger picture here.
See, hail is just one part of a bigger family of weather events called severe convective storms, or SCS for short. This is the category that also includes tornadoes and those super damaging straight-line winds, and they all tend to tag along together in the same weather systems.
And the scale of these other threats is just as massive. You've got over 76 million homes at risk from tornadoes, with a rebuilding cost of over $27 trillion.
For straight-line winds, 64 million homes and over $23 trillion. The numbers are just staggering.
And this, right here, is the key. You have to understand this. For millions and millions of homeowners, these aren't three separate things that might happen to you one day. They are overlapping hazards that can, and do, hit the very same house, sometimes all in the same afternoon.
So, after all that, what does this actually mean for you? Let's wrap this up by bringing it all back home. Let's talk about the new price of risk.
For anyone living in these high-risk areas, the consequences are becoming very real. I mean, think about it. Hail shreds your roof, it turns your car into a golf ball, it can completely shatter a field of solar panels in just a few minutes. That means higher repair costs, filing more claims, facing higher deductibles, and sometimes finding out you have a huge gap in your insurance coverage right when you need it the most.
This whole situation is forcing the insurance industry to completely rethink how they calculate risk. Just knowing your zip code isn't nearly enough anymore. To make sure they can actually pay out claims after a big storm, insurers need incredibly detailed data on every single property. We're talking everything from how old the roof is to the exact materials it's made of.
Which leaves us with one final and pretty heavy question to think about. As our cities keep expanding, pushing deeper and deeper into these areas that are basically storm highways, are we, as a society, building a level of risk that we simply can't afford to cover anymore? That's definitely something worth thinking about.